what are your legislative priorities for this session? I mean, what do you want to see happen when we get to sine die?
A couple of big things, and we've spent almost all of our energy and smartest folks on our end of the building. We've got handling a couple of different issues that are what we are calling our two main issues for the session. The one is a funding formula rewrite of our K-12 education. We are going to pass that probably in the next 2 weeks in the House. As you know, today is the deadline to introduce legislation. So folks have until, I guess, 6 o'clock tonight to get their bills dropped. I'm sure we'll have one last big flurry. We had a big flurry on Thursday and Friday in the House. I think we're up north of 1,300 bills so far. And 1,295 of them are really, really, really good ideas. So,
right.
Anyway, we'll wait through that. But
and this will be it'll be a formula also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It will scrap the MAEP formula. It will go to a more student-based, student-weighted funding formula that even you and I can understand, Lucian. I've seen it. I can bring an iPad up here and I can say, how do you want to tweak this? You want to put more emphasis on low income. You want to put more emphasis on special education. You want to put more emphasis on workforce development. Here are the weights. You can tweak them any way you want, plug in the base student cost, and it gives you a number. It's very easy to understand. It's not too different than what Tennessee did just a year or so ago. So we're excited about that. Now, I will tell you, our 27% rule kind of sets an artificial floor across the state. In other words, no local school district ever pays more than 27% of the per student cost.
In terms of their local contribution? In terms of
their local contribution.
Okay.
This takes a long, hard look at that, and the formula, you can raise that to 28, 29, 30. You could do away with it. And it's interesting to see, what some folks would call the winners and losers. I would say it's more about equity funding and what the formula itself was designed to do from the beginning. And we're not going to do it based on student or teacher units. We're not going to base funding on teacher units or what you got last year, because that seems to be the big thing is, well, this is what we got last year. So we're just always chasing this new number with MAEP. This is a real number that is achievable and doable. Now, it wouldn't mean less money. What we're looking at is actually would be a historic investment in education this coming year. And
correct me if I'm wrong, Speaker. Am I right that we're spending more money now under Republican leadership than ever before on K-12 education?
Absolutely.
Because I think that gets lost when people talk about fully funding MAEP.
It does, because again, with MAEP, the formula. I don't know if it was set up this way on purpose or if it was just a flaw of the system, but you never get there. Right. In other words, if you did hit some magic number this year to say, hey, that was full funding, well, then next year you're chasing a number that's 50 to 100 million more. It's like it's always running away from you, and you can't pin it down. Other states have gone, again, to this more student-based funding that says we have this many students, they have these needs, this is what it should cost.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know if MAEP has been good for children, but it's been great for Democrats because they use it every electoral cycle to say the big bad Republicans won't fully fund education. Why do you hate children, Jason White? And that's just totally inaccurate.
It's totally inaccurate.
If you believe in math, which some of us do because y'all are spending more than ever.
We're spending more than ever. Well, and last year was, again, historic and more than ever.
Well, and focusing more on children, I think, is exactly the right way to do it. Well, we are coming up against a break. We'll have more after this break. With us here in the Trustmark studio is Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Jason White. Thank you again, Speaker, for taking the time to be with us. A couple of questions on the C Spire text line, and if y'all want to be part of the conversation, you can text us at 601-879-4395. Some people are pointing out that because we've not funded the MAP formula historically, they're saying, well, what difference does it make if there is a new formula? You're thinking this is a formula that the legislature will routinely be able to quote, fully fund?
Not only be able to fully fund, the tail's not wagging the dog. In other words, you can say we don't spend enough money on K-12 education, but the reality is we spend almost 50.
Mobile banking. Enroll today at trustmark.com. People you trust, advice that works, member FDIC. Well, with us here in the Trustmark studio is Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Jason White. Thank you again, Speaker, for taking the time to be with us. A couple of questions on the C Spire text line, and if y'all want to be part of the conversation, you can text us at 601-879-4395. Some people are pointing out that because we've not funded the MAP formula historically, they're saying, well, what difference does it make if there is a new formula? You're thinking this is a formula that the legislature will routinely be able to quote, fully fund?
Not only be able to fully fund, it's the tail's not wagging the dog. In other words, you can say we don't spend enough money on K-12 education, but the reality is we spend almost 50 cents of every dollar that you send to Jackson on K-12 education. So we're spending the bulk of our budget, the entire state budget, on K-12 education. I'm not saying that's a bad investment. I'm just saying it's a fact.
Right.
And so for folks to sit around and say, well, you just don't spend enough money, we have seen that per pupil cost in any individual district does not equate to A districts or B districts or high-performing districts. Certainly there is some basic level that's got to be there for folks to educate our kids. And this is not an attempt to undo any of the gains that we've made the last few years, the so-called Mississippi miracle of our test score gains and the things that our schools and educators have been able to do. We just simply want to enhance that and be sure that our funding formula is not propping up some old system where folks had it a certain way. And let's be sure it's about funding on a per-student basis because, we hadn't talked about it yet, but another feature of our education package is what we're calling a portability piece, which says that no public school district school board can hold a student against their will. If they ask to be released, they shall be released.
So that means if you live in, right now, as I understand the law, if you live in, just to make it easy, Jackson, and you want to go to the Rankin County schools, both Rankin County and Jackson have to say it's okay.
Yes, sir. And what we're saying is that if under the scenario you just present, Jackson would not have to say it's okay. If that student could find another public school district that would accept them where their home district is, would have no say in the matter. And the state share of that per student cost would follow that child to that new school district. Now, in D and F districts, we want that child to be able to go anywhere they can find in the state money, whether that's public, private, charter, homeschool, whatever. If they're in a D or F district, we want to open their choice all the way. And that'll be controversial.
Only in D and F districts.
We've got to start somewhere, and we thought that was a way to start to give people in those areas some maximum choice where they don't have much. Now, in addition to that, we have an ESA program now, but we make folks pay for it on the front end and then get reimbursed. We're looking to change that, and the state money actually pay for whatever choice those parents have, a child with a disability or a learning disability and things like that, who we give them some choice now. We would probably limit in a choice feature the total number of students that can go at any one, in any given year, so that we can predict it a little bit and kind of know, which is kind of how Arkansas did it. They limited it the first few years, and eventually it turns into more of a wide open universal choice. We're not headed there yet, but we are headed in the direction of we're not going to do things simply because that's the way we've always done them. We want to change the funding formula, get it boiled down more to a student by student basis with weighted measures based on all other aspects.
So if you're in a DNF district under what you're thinking on the choice side, would you get the full tuition of a private school paid for, or would it be just the current per student cost would follow you?
It would be the current per student cost, the state share,
okay, which
is about 73%. In other words, so or maybe a little more. In other words, if it's $9,000 or $10,000 per student, you would see about $7,500 follow that child to wherever.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good number.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number. Now, we would have to probably limit the number of kids that were available for that in the first few years so that we figure out the take rates for choice in most other states, even in Arizona where they did universal choice. You go anywhere you want to, all the money follows you to whatever place you go to. The take rate was about 7 or 8% or percent.
Really?
So this isn't like half of our students aren't going to just leave their local home school districts. People prefer their local public school. There's no denying that. Nobody's trying to undo that. This is simply recognizing that there are people who have different needs for their kids, and there are places in the state that don't have the same choices that some folks do simply by their zip code. And you say, well, that's fine. Tell them to pick up and move. Everybody can't pick up and move. It's an issue and a problem that I think it's very short-sighted to say you got to make the best of it or move.
Well, you hear so much from the left, and the left is obviously fighting any sort of choice tooth and nail. But you hear so much from them about how we have to have more equity, we have to have more equality, we got to soak the rich, however they want to put it. But the fact of the matter is, rich folks have school choice in Mississippi right now.
That's right.
They can buy a house anywhere they want. They can stroke a check to a private school. It's middle income and lower income people who may be trapped in a bad school who can't afford to move over to a high performing school district.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing that just tears me up. Folks act like this money is the state's money. This money is taxpayers' money.
Right.
Parents sent this money in the form of paying their taxes. This isn't the school system's money. It's not my money. It's not the legislature's money, and it's certainly not MDE's money. And again, that's not a shot at them. I'm just saying we've gotten out of whack here about who's making the decision. It should be the people that are paying the bill.
Amen.
And in this case, it is taxpayers.
Well, and it's ultimately about student success. It's not about whether a district is successful. It's about whether little Johnny comes out able to go out and be a productive citizen. And focusing on funding students, I think, is exactly the right way instead of funding systems.
That's right. And the last thing I'll say about our funding formula piece is this. There will be a particularly heavy weight for career tech curriculum students and school systems that go in that direction, because that is the direction we want to take as much of our education system in the state as we can. That's not to down the college prep track. That is simply to say, in Mississippi, we have lots of good jobs that are available for folks that choose those alternative curriculum tracks, and we want to focus on that. We've done a good job the last few years in setting up Accelerate Mississippi, and what those guys and girls over there have done has been incredible work. We want to piggyback on that and really emphasize the fact that these kids can start getting those certificates and that education way before they've gone to a four-year university and decided that's not for them, and they end back up at one of our good community colleges. We want to start that when they're in about 10th grade and see if we can create a bigger emphasis on that.
I think that's smart. What else do you want to see happen this legislative session?
The other big piece for us in the House is on this healthcare piece. Now, I hear lots of consternation around the fact that, well, you're talking about Medicaid expansion. We are talking about that in some form. Simply, it's been around for 10 years. 40 states are now participating. We are certainly the poorest state, or one of the poorest states in the union. We have some of the most unhealthy people of any state in the union, and we can argue about, health outcomes and why they are the way they are. But the fact is, we're an unhealthy population. And any form of expansion that started covering the working, what I'm calling hardworking, low-income Mississippians. Again, these are folks that are working. This is not, I've heard the talk of, well, this is welfare, this is a handout. It is government insurance. There's no question about that. But here's my point. It's been around for 10 years. Every state that's opting in, 40 of them now, nobody has gone back and opted out and said it was a bad deal. Look at our neighbor to the west in Arkansas. They're very similarly situated to us. Their GDP over the years has grown. Just in the last few years, it's grown, while ours certainly has not in the way that theirs has. Now, people say, yeah, but their rural hospitals are still struggling. This is not going to fix rural hospitals. If we find a way to cover low-income workers with some form of coverage through Medicaid, this won't fix every rural hospital that's ailing. It won't fix some of the provider issues, but it will at least give them some basic level of health care. And I would remind folks, this is the exact same pot of money we would be drawing from on a 90-10 basis that our hospitals found relief back in November, December in an enhanced reimbursement model. That's the same pot of money that this would be coming out of. So it's no different when it comes to that. And I didn't hear a whole bunch of screaming and crying when we were able to pull that off to help the hospitals. This is about helping working Mississippians.
You got time to stick with us for one more segment, Mr. Speaker? Everybody, this is Lucian Smith in for Paul Gallo here on the Gallo Radio Show. Still got a little taste of Paul there as we came back in, so fear not. Paul's out this week, but he will be back next week. With us in studio is Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Jason White, and we were talking before the break a little bit about this health care piece and what y'all are going to do in particular for Mississippi's working folks. And I think that's, you make an important point there. Whatever you think about expanding what's sort of a what people would call a socialized medicine program, the folks who are in that expansion population, those are working people. I mean, that is not a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. Those are folks who are out there working.
They are working. And, there's been a lot of conversation